This is being said again because it needs to be said again, not as repetition of what was examined in the earlier piece on this topic, but as the deeper, more specific examination of the mechanism through which the consequences operate. The first piece named the consequences. This piece examines how they work, how the specific things done to you during the connection are now producing specific, traceable, interior effects in the avoidant that the avoidance management system is working continuously and at increasing cost to contain. The consequences are not abstract. They are not the vague, generalized suffering of someone who has done something regrettable and is living in the ambient discomfort of that regrettability. They are specific. Each consequential effect traces back directly to a specific action, a specific choice, a specific moment in the connection where something was done, to you in the context of genuine intimacy by someone who was operating from fear but was nonetheless making a choice that produced a specific impact. And the specific impact, having produced its effects in your interior across the duration of the connection and its aftermath, has now produced its mirrored effects in the avoidance interior in the aftermath of the loss. The mechanism is this. The specific things done to you are now, in your absence, being felt by the avoidant as the specific shape of what was done, as the outline of the harm experienced from the inside of having caused it rather than from the inside of having received it. The avoidant is not suffering a general loss. They are suffering the particular loss of a particular person who was particular in the ways they were particular because of who they are, and who is gone in the particular way they are gone because of what the avoidant did. The doing is the shape of the suffering. The withdrawal produced the most immediate and the most traceable consequence. Across the connection, the avoidance withdrawals, the managed distances, the created gaps, the moments of emotional unavailability that arrived with the specific reliability of a system performing its function, produced in you a particular kind of relational hunger. Not the simple hunger of insufficient connection, the specific personalized hunger of someone who had glimpsed genuine connection with this specific person and was then, repeatedly, prevented from having it in any sustained way by the management's consistent function. This hunger shaped you. It shaped the quality of your patience, the specific quality of your caring, the way you held the better moments with a tenderness and an investment that was proportional to their rarity. It shaped, ultimately, the quality of your absence, the specific, weighted, irreplaceable quality of someone whose long-sustained patience with the avoidance pattern was the direct consequence of the genuine, suppressed, never quite available depth that the withdrawals were managing against. The avoidant is now experiencing the mirror of this, the specific avoidant experienced hunger that is the mirror of the hunger their withdrawals produced in you. Not the hunger for general connection, for the generic warmth of another person's caring. The specific hunger for you. For the particular quality of your presence that the withdrawals were, for the connection's duration, keeping at the precise distance that allowed the avoidant to feel the warmth without the full intimacy pressure of having it entirely. The withdrawals maintain the avoidant's preferred configuration, and the preferred configuration, now that you are genuinely gone, is no longer available. The configuration required your continued presence at the managed distance. Your genuine absence has removed the configuration's foundation. The withdrawal produced the absence. The absence is the consequence, and the consequence is the avoidant experiencing, in the specific form of your particular absence, the specific shape of what the withdrawals produced. The minimizing produced a different category of consequence. Across the connection, the moments where you expressed something real, a need, a hurt, a genuine assessment of what was happening in the dynamic, and received the management's minimizing response, the reduction of the thing to something smaller than it was, the reframing of your experience into something more comfortable for the avoidant to address, the specific, practiced quality of someone making the legitimate smaller so the management's response to it could be proportional rather than adequate. The minimizing had a specific effect. It produced, across the duration of its application, the incremental erosion of your confidence in your own perception. The repeated experience of bringing something real and having it received as something smaller produced the specific corrosive doubt about whether the something real was actually as real as you perceived it to be. This is one of the most specific and most insidious consequences of minimizing in a relational context. It does not simply fail to meet the thing being expressed, it actively undermines the legitimacy of the expression's content. The minimizing's mirror consequence in the avoidant is the specific inability to minimize the loss. The management that minimized your experience cannot minimize the experience of losing you, because the experience of losing you is not an experience of an external thing that the management can reduce to a more comfortable size. It is an interior experience. It is happening inside the management. And the management cannot minimize the interior experiences it is itself producing any more than a filter can filter itself. The avoidant is experiencing, in the specific form of an unminimizable interior loss, the consequence of having deployed minimizing as the primary tool for handling whatever was inconveniently large or uncomfortably real in the connection. The tool is unavailable for the current task, and the unavailability is the consequence of its extended, careless application to your experience. The inconsistency, the warmth followed by the withdrawal, the closeness followed by the distance, the cycle that produced in you the specific, exhausting, hope-sustaining and hope-disappointing rhythm of a connection that was never fully reliable, produced a specific consequence in your interior. The consequence was the specific, hypervigilant quality of someone who has learned to attend closely to the variations in temperature because the temperature was not predictable and the predictions mattered. The inconsistency produced the monitoring. Your monitoring of the avoidance emotional weather, learned as the necessary navigation tool of a connection that was not stable, was the direct consequence of the inconsistency's sustained application. The mirror consequence is the avoidant now experiencing, for the first time from the receiving end, a form of the relational inconsistency's outcome. Not through anything you are deliberately doing. The inconsistency's consequence is not something you are applying to the avoidant. It is the natural, structural result of someone whose orientation toward the avoidant has shifted from the specific, monitoring, attending to temperature quality that the inconsistency produced to the genuine, non-monitoring, self-directed quality of someone who has genuinely reoriented. The avoidant, accustomed to your monitoring, accustomed to being attended to, accustomed to your orientation toward their temperature as the background constant of the relational landscape, encounters the absence of the monitoring, the absence of the attending, the absence of the specific inconsistency-produced hypervigilance that was, paradoxically, a form of investment in them, and the absence of this investment experienced not as your deliberate withholding, but as the natural result of the genuine reorientation that the inconsistency, applied long enough, eventually produced, is its own specific, traceable consequence of the doing suffering. The accountability failures, the specific moments where the avoidance behavior caused clear, traceable harm, and the accountability that the harm called for was deflected, minimized, redirected, or simply absent, produced in you a specific, layered consequence. The consequence was not simply the harm itself, it was the harm plus the specific, compounding quality of harm that is not acknowledged. The wound plus the specific additional wound of the wound being treated as though it did not exist, or as though your experience of it was the problem, rather than the behavior that produced it. This compounding is one of the most specific and most damaging consequences of accountability failures in intimate relationships. Because the acknowledgement of harm, the specific, direct, full-weight receipt of the impact of one's behavior on another person, is itself a form of care. It says, what I did to you is real. Your experience of it is legitimate. I am not going to manage around the reality of the impact in order to protect myself from the full weight of having caused it. The absence of accountability says the opposite. It says, the reality of your experience is negotiable. The impact of my behavior is something I can manage around rather than something I owe you the honest receipt of. The mirror consequence is the avoidant now facing, in the interior, the specific accountability that was avoided during the connection. Not because you are demanding it, you may have fully released the expectation of it, but because the interior, operating on its own logic and its own timeline, is producing the reckoning that the connection's real-time management prevented. The honesty that was avoided with you is arriving with the avoidant themselves, in the private, unwitnessed form of someone who is finally, without the management's deflection available as an option, sitting with the full weight of what was done. The accountability failure deferred the reckoning, it did not prevent it. And the deferred reckoning, arriving now in the aftermath with the full weight of everything that was not processed in real time, is the consequence of the deferral. What does this mean for you? It does not mean satisfaction in the conventional sense. The uncomplicated, straightforward pleasure of someone who has seen a harm's perpetrator receive proportional suffering. The avoidance suffering is not uncomplicated, and your response to the knowledge of it should not be expected to be uncomplicated either. The avoidant was not a villain, was a person whose fear governed their behavior in ways that produced real harm to a person they genuinely cared for. The suffering they are experiencing is real, and it is the consequence of their choices, and it is also the suffering of a person who carries genuine feeling and genuine capacity for pain. What it means is something more specific and more personally useful. It means the honest accounting of what was done, the full, clear, direct seeing of the specific actions and their specific impacts is not distorted by the wish to protect the avoidant from the weight of the accounting. The avoidant made choices. The choices had consequences. The consequences are operating in the avoidant's interior, in the specific, traceable, directly connected to the doing ways examined above. This is simply the truth of what happened and what it produced. And the truth, held clearly, without the softening that protects the avoidant from its full weight and without the hardness that converts it into something punitive, is the most useful thing available to you as the foundation for whatever comes next, not as justification for anything, not as the measure of what the avoidant deserves, as the honest, clear, specific accounting of a situation that was real, whose doing was real, whose consequences are real, and whose truth you now carry with the specific, clear-eyed, finally honest quality of someone who understands exactly what happened and exactly what it produced in everyone it touched, including you, including them, with the full, honest, unminimable weight of both.